Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today for Show Me the Money, a masterclass on first-time home buyer programs. I'm Sherelle Gaines with MidFirst Bank, and I would also like to thank the Orange County Realtors for hosting this webinar today. In today's class, we are going to go through some of the down payment assistance and closing cost programs that are available to you and your buyer. There's a lot of nuance that goes down in the down payment assistance programs, and it's important to know what is available, when is it available, how it's available, because each program is different. So I'll walk you through every step of the way, as well as give you some resources that you can easily share with your buyer. If you have any questions or specific scenarios, please do not hesitate to reach out to me directly. Please take a screenshot or note of my contact information. I would love to be of service to you and your clients. You're welcome to reach me directly on my cell phone at 619-241-6442 or at sherelle.gaines@midfirst.com. We will have some handouts that are available to you. Orange County Realtors will distribute those directly. But if you need anything, any links or additional resources, please don't hesitate to call or email and reach out to me directly. So let's get started. Is like to start with what is called a buyer wait calendar. Before we even go into down payment assistance, I think this is a great tool because it really is going to help people that are on the fence or may not even know that they are potentially eligible and ready to purchase a home. And it gives them just some kind of clarity on their financial circumstance before they even meet with the lender, before they kind of go through the pre-qualification or pre-approval process. This is a really great tool to share. And I'm happy to share a link to the buyer weight calculator with you. It basically gives your buyer a chance to put in kind of their scenario and assess whether or not it's a good time for them to buy or to wait. A lot of times, people that, especially that are renting, which is what you're going to find with a lot of first time buyer programs, they're going to be required to be a first time home buyer. So, presume they're currently renting. With this, I just don't know. Sometimes they think, oh, I have 20% down, or I have to be in this for this certain financial space. And they may actually be qualified even when they think they are not. So this calculator is going to walk them through basically the ability to buy now versus the cost to wait. So you see in this example, for example, what it could look like for a buyer. It says buy now with your 3% down payment. So someone may have some money saved, maybe not the whole 20%, but they could be able to get into purchasing sooner rather than later versus waiting until they've amassed 20%. A lot of buyers have this perception that they have to have 20% down, and that's just no longer the case anymore. For first time home buyers, there's so many first time home buyer programs out there that for buyers as little as 0% down, upwards of 3% down. So with that little down, the buyer could be ready now or within the immediate future. So it shows them what they'd be looking at payment in terms of a full figure. They're doing 3% versus 20%. Again, it's going to oftentimes be a surprise for them because they may think, oh, wow, to have $100,000 saved when in fact they don't. And also it works them through scenarios depending on the home price they're looking at. Really is a great option and a great calculator for comparing buying now versus staying and renting. And what that could look like if you were to have to wait and wait and wait until you got that 20% down. It just gives the buyer an option of basically adjusting home price, adjusting the down payment, interest rate. So they're allowed to play with those figures and figure out if now is a good time for them to buy or wait. So it's a really wonderful resource for really any client, especially those that are on the fence and may need a little encouraging and pushing. Now, let's get into the element of down payment assistance, closing cost assistance, and these programs that are available to buyers, and some of the pros and cons. Now, big pros, lots of pros. Allows you oftentimes to increase the purchase price where there's less out of pocket expense for the buyer because they have that assistance. It also could expedite their purchase timeline. So, by having one of these down payment assistance or closing cost assistance programs and utilizing it, the buyer may go from holding off another year or two to being able to jump into the market immediately or in the near future. Also, some of these programs offer forgiveness where they can actually have the amount that's being borrowed fully forgiven. There's also grants that require no repayment required. So that's a really nice feature. If you don't have to pay it back, and it allows the borrower to get in faster and sooner. There are some cons. A lot of times these programs are going to have stringent guidelines, and that's something we're going to go through today. I'm going to walk you through several examples of down payment assistance and closing cost assistance programs that are available to buyers currently. They often will have slightly longer escrows as well, anywhere between 30 to 45 days. So it's always important to know you may need to write the contract slightly differently versus if you're working with a buyer that has the 20%. These may be slightly different structures. So you may be looking at a close of escrow 30 days or 45 days, depending on the program. Most can accommodate 30 days, but it's always important to know that like there may be some flexibility involved. These programs are also first come, first serve. So the funds often initiate at the very top of the year in Q1. By Q4, sometimes Q3, they may be exhausted. Every program is different. It's important to know the deadlines for these programs. Sometimes they're just rolling because they're first come, first served. Sometimes there may be a hard deadline that a borrower would have to submit by in order to receive those funds. I'll walk you through that in detail with the examples we go through, but it's just something to be mindful of, especially if you're working with the buyer towards the end of the year. If you're working in fall or winter, there's the likelihood that funds could be exhausted by that timeline. If you're looking to take advantage of down payment assistance, you definitely then want to be aggressive and start at the top of the year for the buyer to have the best chance at being able to access any down payment assistance or closing cost assistance. Also, there's sometimes additional documentation that is required for these programs. Every program is different. We'll walk through some of the documentation that's needed, but sometimes they may need 3 bank statements instead of their standard 2. Sometimes the home buyer will have to complete home buyer education. More often than not, that's going to be the case. Some allow for online courses, some are required to be in person or a specific course. It varies from program to program. But these are some of the pros and the cons. Now, as a realtor, do you have to worry about all of these? No. This is where your loan officer, your lending partner really comes in. So, this is where someone like me steps in, really to walk through the nuance of this. But I always like to just share this information upfront. That way, you can have this as a tool in your arsenal and you're ready to deploy it when and if you need it. Now, let's also go through a really quick search engine that's easy to use, easy to share. The link is on the screen, but feel free to email me if you'd like direct access. This is a down payment assistance search engine. It's really, really amazing for just seeing what down payment assistance is currently available. It's going to give you in real time what is still available and what is out of funds. For example, if you look in this screenshot, it tells you programs that are currently available to borrowers, as well as which ones have exhausted funds. So it's good to use as a resource, but you always still want to go on the exact program's website and get information real time because the search engine could potentially be delayed. So if you ever have a question, if there are funds available, you want to go to the down payment assistance website specifically for that program and get there. Sometimes they will update it daily so that people know when funds are available and if funds are close to being out or have been exhausted. This is a great resource where you can see anything both locally, regionally, statewide, nationally, what assistance is available. Let's get into some of these programs because that's what you're here for. Show me the money. You want to know what is available to your buyer. Like to start with a really amazing option that's through a bank. That's actually through MidFirst, the bank that I represent. And it's an amazing first time home buyer program. I recommend if you're working with a first time home buyer to start with a bank because a lot of these banks first time buyer programs where they offer payment assistance, closing cost assistance, assistance with mortgage insurance. They really make the loan as affordable and accessible for the buyer as possible. So let's walk through an example. So, for example, at MidFirst, we have the Dream Home Loan and Grants. It's a really amazing first time home buyer program that offers the option to put no money down. Yes, you heard that correct. We do offer the option of up to 100% financing. So this is even better than down payment assistance because the buyer really could put no money down, whether or not they have the ability to do so. It can still put money down, or they could potentially take advantage of no money down. It's a great way for someone to be able to get into the market immediately, even if they don't necessarily have that full typical 20% down. Great way to get in and not feel like, oh, I have to have X amount saved. When you can do no money down, it really makes the barrier of entry almost obsolete. So on this program, there's no mortgage insurance. Everyone knows if you're not putting 20% down, then you have to pay mortgage insurance. It's a big waste of money. It only protects the lender. So I say if you don't have to pay mortgage insurance, why pay it? So for example, with this loan product, there is no PMI. You are going to see that on many first-time home buyer programs that are through banks. They often will waive the mortgage insurance. So you're going to see that these are typically going to be conventional fixed rate loans. Pretty much any down payment assistance program is going to require it be a conventional fixed rate loan. They do not complement ARMs. ARMs are a very advanced buyer loan option. So that's going to kind of be standard. So for example, with this program, it is a conventional fixed rate loan. Loan terms offered are 15, 20, and 30 years. And it goes up to the conforming loan limit in terms of no money down. We actually go upwards of even the high cost loan limit of almost just over 1.2 million. For that, slightly different terms. We do require down payment, but we try to make with our first time home buyer program very easy and financially accessible. So this was a really great option for someone that just needs to get into the market immediately, doesn't want to worry about having a down payment. This is 100% financing is a game changer. We also offer a grant of $6,500 to help with the closing costs. There's no repayment required whatsoever. The great thing about this grant is that it's a grant. It is a true grant. There's no repayment. They don't take out a silent. There's no shared appreciation. That's just a grant to help make the loan easy and financially accessible. The main condition is just the property must be owner occupied, primary residence, and located within the program territory. When it comes to the program territory, it does encompass a good majority of Orange County, as well as LA County, San Diego County, and Santa Barbara County. So we offer this loan product throughout a good majority of Southern California region. It can be applied towards a Warrensville condo, a townhouse, a single family residence, or a duplex with one of the units being owner occupied primary residence. So very flexible in terms of the collateral. We also offer flexible underwriting, and we can close in 30 days or less. I'm actually on a file where we're closing in 20 days. So it's really nice because on our end, we do have that flexibility to actually close faster than 30 days. I'd say in general, many banks are going to be looking at 30 days for a first time home buyer program. But on our end, if the buyer is pre-approved, then we could potentially reduce that close of escrow. So I would love to be of service if anyone is in need, especially if you have a buyer that could take advantage of no money down or some money to help them with their closing costs. Love to be of service. Don't hesitate to call or email. Let's look at some other options that are outside a traditional lender. So when I say a traditional lender, I'm speaking about a direct lender like a bank, like MidFirst, for example. Now, when we go into these down payment assistance programs, these oftentimes are going to now be some type of silent second that's being taken out, where you're going to have your loan and then it's going to go as a silent second on top of the loan. So let's get into that now. For example, there is MAP, the County of Orange Mortgage Assistance Program. I'm going to walk you through the details of this program. Everything's also going to be on screen. Feel free to take a screenshot. going to walk you through basically what the buyer needs in order to qualify and those nuances of the program. This is up to $80,000 in down payment assistance. It's not to exceed 20% of the purchase price. And this assistance is in the form of a silent second. With this, the principal and interest is going to be deferred for the loan term. These funds are first come, first serve. So, like I mentioned, if someone's looking to take advantage of a program like this, you want to jump in top a year, top a year, top a year. That's definitely going to be important because sometimes those funds get exhausted very quickly. Now, this program is exclusive to first time home buyers purchasing a home in Orange County, in incorporated areas, or in specific cities. I do have a list of the specific cities that it does encompass. And as long as they meet those qualifiers, they could potentially receive these funds. Now, it is an income restricted program. So you're going to see one of the through lines with many down payment assistance programs is it is income restricted. So they have to basically meet the restrictions where they cannot make over a certain amount. If they make over the certain amount, they will not qualify for the program. So for example, this has a specification if it's one person, two people, three people, however many people are living in the household, and the maximum income for that household. So, for example, for a two-person household, the maximum income that they could make to qualify is $101,000. So that gives you a breakdown depending on how many people are in the household. Some of these down payment assistance do have very strict income restrictions. So these programs may not be a fit for your buyer depending on where your income is for that buyer. So it's something where if you're thinking of going this route, I would just connect them with a lender who could walk them through if they qualify and for which programs that may be available to them. Now, one of the requirements for MAP is that the buyer must qualify and obtain a first mortgage loan from a participating lender. So for this program, they have certain lenders that they work with and to be one of their participating lenders. And then once the participating lender pre-qualifies them, then they would be able to add on this program on top of that. And there's a link for it. So you will receive a handout with links to all of these programs as well. So that way, if you have any questions, you could also reach out directly to the provider. Another program, this one's city specific. So, for example, many cities will have down payment assistance programs available for their city or their county. So, that one was the county of Orange. Now, this one is a city specific. This is, for example, the city of Santa Ana. They have a down payment assistance program with up to $120,000, depending on the buyer's income level. So, this is a deferred loan with 0% interest. There is a repayment required after 45 years. And they do loan forgiveness. That's huge. Anytime you can get something forgiven, you definitely want to go that route. So they do forgive up to $40,000 for eligible applicants. Again, funds are first come, first serve. Applications are currently open, but they are only accepting applications for households that meet a certain income. So I do have a breakdown of those incomes for 1, 2, 3, or 4 people in the household. So that again is an income specific program. If you are working with any buyers that are kind of considered low to moderate income, these programs are going to be a good fit. Now, with this program, the requirement is the buyer must contribute at least 3% of personal funds. So this is a scenario where the buyer is going to have some reserves, some money saved to put towards the down payment. Those funds do have to be seasoned for a minimum of 90 days. And then they have a DTI restriction of up to 40% front end, 45% back end. Some of these things you don't have to worry about. DTI, that's a lender, loan officer concern. Not something you necessarily have to think about, worry about, or even remember past today. But I mention it just because these are things that the lender is going to have to be cognizant of and make sure that the buyer qualifies. They do have to have a minimum credit score of 640 or higher, and they have to complete a HUD-approved home buyer education. With this program, there are no ARMs allowed or cosigners. The buyer does have to be able to qualify his or her own, and they do take a preference to veterans and individuals who work or live in Santa Ana. So really great option for anyone that's looking in that area. For this, the close of escrow is 30 to 45 days. So, like I mentioned, when you're writing the contract and being cognizant of these timelines and the close of escrow, this is a program where you may have to be a little bit more flexible, while others you may not. You may be able to still close in 30 days or less. And then for this program, a buyer can use any lender, which is really nice. They don't have to use a preferred lender, but they do have to go ahead and get pre approved through a lender. This is a big one, the California dream for all. I feel when people talk about down payment assistance, this is the one everyone thinks about. The Cali Chafe, Cal. This is the one that is always top of mind that everyone wants to take advantage of. Very popular a few years back when the funds basically were exhausted in like 11 days flat. The program has since changed a bit. So this is not just a first-time home buyer program, it's also a first generational program. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit because there is a difference between first-time home buyer and first generational home buyer. But this program does allow for up to $150,000 in down payment assistance. So up to 20% of the purchase price, not to exceed $150,000. This is a shared appreciation loan. It's very different than some of the other programs. This is basically where the buyer is going to have to not just pay back the loan, but some of the appreciation in the home as well. So if the home appreciated $100,000, for example, then they would share $20,000 of it because they have to share 20% appreciation. Great way for a homeowner to get into the home faster, to get a large down payment assistance amount, but they do need to be cognizant it is shared appreciation. The term of repayment is 30 years or less, and it's going to be due upon sale, transfer of title, payoff, or refi. So if a major event occurs, that loan does come due as well as the appreciation. And this is for first generational home buyers purchasing an owner occupied property anywhere in California. So this is great. Anyone that's purchasing in California as a first generational home buyer can take advantage of it. It's not city or county specific, it is state specific. Again, they have to be a first generational home buyer. So let's talk about what this means. To qualify as a first time home buyer, that means you cannot have any ownership interest in real estate whatsoever within the past 3 years. So let me give you an example of what this means. If you have someone that purchased a home 10 years ago, they sold that home 5 years ago, and they do not own any other real estate, they are now considered a first time home buyer because, again, they sold the home 5 years ago. So they have not had any ownership interest in real estate within the past 3 years. Let me give you another example. You have someone that has purchased a home and they sold it a year ago. They're not considered a first time home buyer. They're considered a repeat home buyer because they have purchased and sold within the past 3 years. So when we're looking at if they qualify as first time home buyer, they cannot have any ownership interest within 3 years of the recording date. We basically have the recording date and we look 3 years out. And then whatever that date is, from that date moving forward, they are no longer, they would no longer be considered a repeat home buyer. They would be considered a first time home buyer. If they own an investment property, sometimes people say, well, I don't have a primary residence. I just have this investment property I purchased in another state. They are still considered a repeat home buyer. You cannot have any ownership interest in real estate whatsoever. But that includes whether or not it's a first home, a second home, vacation home, investment property. All of those would qualify as having ownership interest in real estate. If it's purchased through an LLC, a corporation, sometimes people have done that where it's an investment property, but they have an ownership interest in the business. That means they have an ownership interest in the property because they are tied to the business and the business is tied to the property. So it's very clear as to what a first-time home buyer is considered. A first-generational home buyer is someone whose family, there's like basically no history of their immediate family, their parents having an ownership interest in real estate as well. So that basically would be, they'd have to be a first-time home buyer and their parents, adoptive or biological, could not have had ownership interest in real estate whatsoever. So they'd have to be purchasing not just as a first-time buyer, but as a first generational buyer. So very specific qualification here. With this, there is an application period where basically they submit for a voucher. For this program, the vouchers are closed. So I mentioned that you want to always look at the top of the year because this is a program that their vouchers, they open up and they close at a certain date. I believe they close around March of every year or so. So it's one of those things where you really have to get in immediately at the top of the year because if you try to get in later in the year, this program is just not going to be available to your buyer. It is a randomized drawing where they select registrants to receive funds, but it's not first come, first serve. It is something where you register for the voucher, but the voucher deadline does close at a certain date. Now, with this, the maximum household income for Orange County is $204,000. So it does have an income restriction, but a much higher income restriction for this program. And then, like I mentioned, requirements first generational home buyer, first time home buyer as well. And they do have to be a resident of California, purchasing in California, and they have to complete a 1 hour California Dream for All home buyer course. You do have to use a preferred lender, a Cal HFA lender for this program, and also meet the eligibility for a standard conventional loan. So this is something, again, the loan officer, the lender is going to walk the buyer through and make sure that they can qualify. Nothing that you have to worry about as an agent, but it's something that the lender will be able to qualify on their end, but you would have to go through one of their preferred lenders. Now let's get into some closing cost assistance because we went through down payment assistance. Those were some examples of down payment assistance programs. Closing costs are different. As you know, buyers have to have both a down payment and closing costs. So let's talk about that because sometimes buyers will have enough funds for one and not necessarily the other. So this is a really amazing closing cost assistance program that is available through CAR, the California Association of Realtors, and the Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. It is a joint program, and by being a CAR realtor, you automatically have access to this program. So I would say definitely screenshot this, take advantage of it, because it's something that's going to be an easy tie-in for you as a realtor, and also could be something that you can market with and really put yourself as a premier agent that's able to help with closing cost assistance for your buyers. This is a $10,000 grant. Again, it's a grant, so there is no repayment required, fully forgiven. $10,000 grant towards closing cost assistance. Funding is available for income eligible first time home buyers. They have to be a member of an underserved community and purchasing a home anywhere in California. Applications are currently open, and the program is going to be first come, first serve. There is an income restriction, so you will see on the screen the breakdown of a 1, a 2, or a 3, 4-person household and the income maximums based on that number. Buyer will have to complete a HUD-approved home buyer education course, be purchasing a single-family residence in California. You do have to live in the home for a minimum of 3 years, and you cannot have more than $20,000 in savings after the purchase. So this is really designed for people that need help with closing costs. They've put some money out for the down payment. Now they need help for the closing costs. So this is where they're going to look at the bank statement, and basically after those closing costs are paid out, the buyer could not have more than $20,000 remaining. Again, nothing you have to worry about. This is something that the loan officer, the lender, will worry about on their end. They'll walk you through it and making sure the buyer can take advantage of the closing costs. And this, you do have to submit an application once in escrow. They do have a 3-week minimum for that submission. And then the buyer does already have to have financing in place, but they can use any lender they like. So this, again, is a great option for anyone needing specifically closing cost assistance. And it's a great tie-in by being a California Association of Realtor member. Let's talk about some home ownership counseling because you may be working with a buyer that this is very green. They need some help. They're not ready to be connected with the lender. They just kind of need someone to walk them through anything from income, credit, reserves, and just really trying to get their file in place. So for example, I have some really amazing homeownership counseling organizations that are local to Orange County. There's Epicenter Foundation. There's Affordable Housing Clearinghouse. These are two wonderful resources for your buyer. I have their websites included. These organizations often do home buyer education, both in person and online. They have events throughout the year. So definitely encourage your buyer to attend one, and they need to connect with a home ownership counseling resource and get just a little bit more preparation before they're connected with the lender for pre-approval or pre-qualification. These services are often offered at no or low cost. Um, They also help with financial literacy. There's many times courses offered in both English and Spanish as well. And again, it's really great resource for first-time home buyers and anyone that's just thinking about home ownership at the current moment. Here's a resource for some home ownership education. This is Fannie Mae's HomeView Home Ownership Education course. Can be found at fanniemae.com/education. It's available 24/7 in both English and Spanish, and there's no cost for up to two applicants. Now, with this is basically for anyone that's needing to do home ownership education and get a certificate of completion to say, hey, I've done a HUD approved home ownership education course. I just need to be able to prove it to my lender. Really great resource. Many lenders will be able to connect the buyer directly with the resource, but why not have this in your back pocket so that way your buyer can just nip this in a bud as a first time home buyer and get it off their plate. So that way the process, once they're in escrow, goes really smoothly and they're best prepared. If you guys have any questions, any feedback, you want to go over anything, you're looking for a lender to do a pre approval, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to be of service. My direct line is 619-241-6442. The email is sherelle.gaines@midfirst.com. Please save my contact. Happy to share any of these resources with you, any links or information, that buyer weight calculator, that is all available to you at any time you may need. So, love to be a great resource. I am going to quickly just look in the chat and the Q&A to see if there are any questions. If not, no worries. You're always welcome to reach out to me directly via email or phone. I don't see any questions at this moment. I will give a chance, if there are any, to go ahead and drop them in either the chat or the Q&A. If there are none, I just thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate all of you for attending. I also thank the Orange County Realtors for assisting and hosting. I look forward to being a resource. Again, I am Sherelle Gaines, Assistant Vice President with MidFirst Bank. Thank you and have a wonderful day.